If the Christian God does exist, it is not worthy of my worship. In this video, I'm going to explain why, even if the existence of the Christian God was proven to be true, I would still not worship said God. There are numerous reasons, and I'm going to break them down in this video. I could get into the actual catalyst that made me decide to go from being a Christian, being a person of the faith, to eventually deciding not to acknowledge that. But this isn't really that kind of video. The purpose of the video is to explain intellectually why I think the approach that people take, not just to religion, but specifically to Christianity, as it is the major religion of the United States, why it fails to really grab onto me. Despite coming from a Christian household, despite being in the South, despite Christianity being pretty much everywhere. It's basically in our laws, it's at this point in our schools, but I think there are real reasons why people actually leave or abandon their faith. At the very least, they recognize that other people's faith can be very problematic, not just for them, but for the way that we interact with the very world we live in. The main points I'm going to cover are 1. The eerie silence of God, 2. The supposed natural inherent justification for the existence of a God, and 2. The properness of a God. Third reason is going to be an admission that there probably is a God, but that is not reflected in the Christian version. And then the fourth reason is going to be on meaning itself. There's a phrase you've probably heard before. It goes, silence is violence. Now, typically this is in the setting of things like civil rights or in the presence of some sort of evil or injustice that has been done across society. And the reason why we say this is because when we acknowledge that people can do things, they can say things, they can look at someone's situation, even their own situation, and look at it and have multiple choices, one of them to remain silent. We realize that the blame cannot always be on the perpetrators. Blame can also be on someone who chose inaction. To some degree, when you live in a world, in a society, you are not a ghost. You do not get to decide to just disappear and not exist. What you are is a bystander. You're a community member. You're a person that is standing next to someone when they're drowning or when they're fighting demons, whatever you may call it. And it's for this reason, when you imply the labels such as omnipotent or omniscient to God, someone who is all powerful or all knowing, it begs the question. Imagine someone is drowning. You have the ability to save them. You know you can save them, and you choose not to. What is the moral justification for that? Now, for a second, let's understand the reason why I'm saying this. The reason is because you can't have the claim that the Christian God is both all powerful and all compassionate. It does not work. At least if you consider an inclusive version of the word empathy. Sure, by the biblical definition, God can do whatever he wants. So anything and everything is permissible. And we'll get into that topic here in a minute. But the point I'm getting at is, me personally, the way that I live my life, the way that I view the world, I cannot sit here and justify the existence of a God who inherently, by doing nothing, justifies the existence of things like cancer in children, tsunamis that affect coastal communities, famines, droughts. There are so many things that can be prevented with omnipotence and omniscience. It simply is inexcusable. It's not something that I can forgive. I think forgiveness as a whole is an incredibly powerful concept. In fact, I think it's probably the only real good thing to come out of Christianity. Obviously, there are a number of other things. Many of the world's inventors or scientists have been Christian people. So obviously the people of the faith can do a lot of things. But the concept itself, the faith itself, gives the world very little when it comes to actual behavior. And so one of the things that I do think is actually very charitable is forgiveness. But I don't think that's something that exclusively comes from a God, nor does it have to be ordained. The point is, there is much pain in the world that can be stopped, and an all-powerful God chooses not to intervene and help people. That's not fair, not even a little bit. Why does a child have to die of cancer? Why do people have to drown? Why do we have to eat in the first place? Why do people kill animals? None of this is reasonable for an all-powerful God. What is the description of heaven that people claim? It's a place of milk and honey. It's a place where you have no worries. Hakuna Matata. It's a place where you will never starve, never be unhappy, you'll never lack, you won't be without, you won't suffer. Why couldn't that just be the default? The next point is going to be on the very basis of deism in itself. So this argument applies to Christianity, any other religions that choose to look at the deification of an entity as rightfulness. What does this mean? This means that people identify some sort of divinity as correct. Whatever they do, their behaviors, their thought processes, their psychology, all of these things are inherently correct. Why? Because they're gods. My problem with this is that this makes no sense. And if anything, it makes a lot of sense when you look at the Gnostic perspective of Christianity. Don't quote me on any of this. It is a reflection on how people look at the realness of the world and acknowledge that it's incredibly difficult to cope with. So with the Gnostics, they look at the Christian God as the demiurge. It's essentially this evil creature who, of course, is godlike. It has all of the power to create a world, but it is inherently evil in some nature, which is equally as illogical. But they try to make sense of this by saying, okay, clearly an all-powerful creature made the earth. Obviously, it was something significantly more grand than us. It was something supernatural. As they say, every painting has a painter, which I'll get into in a second. But because they recognize the suffering in the world, they look at it and they say, the God that has been given to us is a lesser God, and it is a bad God. And so you look at that and you realize what's happening is people are trying to make sense of the world. What can they cling on to except for things like truth? But the reality is that for the vast majority of history, we have not had truth. We just did not have it. We didn't know the earth was round. I mean, depending on the culture you were living in and whether or not people decided to accept it or not, we didn't collectively standardize the roundness of the earth. We didn't know that the stars weren't just things in the sky, that they were actually balls of gas. We didn't know that over the horizon there was an entire couple of continents. Like, these are things that we just did not understand. We didn't have a solid reference to truth. So we have to, socially, be able to justify the things that we do. And this in itself is not nonsensical. I think for a large majority of time for society, religion has been used as a placeholder to get people to act straight. And I don't mean straight as in gay versus straight. I mean straight as in, like, in line with the rules. It's a really good way to convince people to be good people, to tell them that if you don't, there is a Godhead in the sky that's going to smite you. And even if he doesn't do it right this very second, oh boy, you better wait. Because when you die, you're going to atone for your sins. And so I think that makes sense. I think it makes a lot of sense from a social engineering standpoint. But when you actually look at it philosophically, you realize, okay, just because you have godhood does not make you inherently correct. And this is important because when you go to look at the Bible, what people will describe to be the Word of God, you realize that, and I'm not debating this is how the Bible is written. If you need to go get the actual intellectual scholarly review, go to Dan McClellan. He will explain in detail what I'm talking about. But the Bible explicitly endorses or condones things like slavery. And it's just not something that I'm willing to go with. I just can't do that. And so the problem with this is that you have what is supposed to be an objective, absolute reality or truth, and then people disagree with it. So it is either true because God said so, or it's not, and therefore God is wrong. And this is the problem, is that people get baited, both culturally and through families, to be blindly obedient. People trust authority and they trust leaders of faith simply because they feel like the word of God is absolute. It's the same reason why people didn't start reading the Bible. They just trusted the priest. And then at some point the printing press was invented. People had to read the book for themselves, and they said, wait, I've been lied to. None of the shit that he's saying makes any fucking sense. This is not what God said. We have to understand, just because something is said with a tone or it is said with authority does not make it inherently correct. And that is my second problem, is that you cannot apply objective morality, see the consequences of it, and then backtrack and say, oh, well, we misinterpreted this and that. No, your religion is just wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and act like I have some sort of objective morality. I'm not saying that. I do believe in a subjective morality. What I am saying is, if you come to me and try to convince me that your religion does not justify something that I don't agree with, and I find out you're wrong, I don't know what to tell you other than I'm not interested. I'm just simply not. The third point is that, yes, there is likely a God. I don't think it is unimaginable that there is some sort of supernatural, all-inclusive being that dictated the natural laws of the world. I don't think that's unreasonable. So we look at the world around us and we say, wait, this came from something, logically speaking, right? And that's its whole other argument. I'm a big fan on logic, but it unravels at a certain point. When you look at the science of the universe, of the quote-unquote beginning of the universe, assuming it had a beginning, the math doesn't check out. It doesn't make any sense. We don't understand. We can't conceptualize, not even just the math. We can't conceptualize what it means to be before time. That doesn't make any sense. It's like trying to talk about space. What's past the universe? The universe is expanding, right? Okay, well, what's past the edge? Out there where it's expanding. What's past that? We don't fucking know. We can't conceptualize. What is non-space? We can't conceptualize that. And so you have a lot of people that are making an incredibly, incredibly large claim that they have an understanding of the universe. And I don't mean that they understand everything. What I'm saying is they claim that they know where it came from. And I think that's bogus. I think to think that you know is incredibly arrogant because you don't question things. When you know something, everything else is wrong, and that's problematic. Who the hell am I to say time isn't a loop? Who the hell am I to say that time just doesn't exist at all? I have no clue. None. We can, of course, and this is the other side of it, where you look at science as a religion. This is the other side where you realize that the other people on the other side of the aisle are just as delusional. There's a point where science just doesn't work anymore. I understand the point of science is to eliminate the bad issues and focus on things. The point I'm getting at is that the point of science is to solve a question, but then also realize that as soon as you solve that question, you've already generated 10 more questions. It's a never-ending endeavor, which is not inherently a wrong thing. I think science is a very, very profitable, beautiful thing. Obviously, it has taken us a very long way. Science is a good thing. The problem is that we act like it's not a religion. Like we don't adhere to some sort of logical tendency, that it isn't inherently correct. We don't know. There's no way to objectively prove these things, and we can call them objective, but how do you know it's objective? How can you convince yourself that it's objective? And the last one that I did want to mention, and this is a much more personal or individual perspective, and that's going to be on meaning itself. I don't apply really any value to meaning. If meaning matters to you, then good for you. But from the perspective of a person who does not value meaning, who doesn't search for meaning, it almost entirely dismantles the reasoning for a God. And I mean a personal God, not an impersonal God, which is an incredibly big difference. Because I don't dismiss the possibility of there being an all-eternal being. But does that mean that he's looking over my shoulder, checking his list twice, sending me to hell because I didn't wear the right clothing or not kill gay people? These are things that, when I look back, even if I were to die right this very second, I would not sit here and say my life had no meaning, because I don't value the word. It means nothing to me, to be quite frank. I'm still a creature. But say I die right now, and I'm at the pearly gates, and I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I'm not tripping balls. I'm pretty sure I'm not having a schizo episode. Like, I've been shown enough proof. It's just, it is what it is. I did die. It be like that. I had a heart attack. GG's. Send my ass up there. And then we have St. Peter sitting there running over my life, and he's like, you know what? I'm not sure what to do with you. Let's send you to God, and he'll judge you. I'd walk straight up to God, and I would say, I don't care. You can give me whatever you want. You can sentence me to this or that. I'm not worshiping you. You don't deserve it. Nietzsche has a quote where he says, I cannot believe in a God who wants to be praised all the time. To sit there and act like God is worthy of worship for doing worse than the bare minimum, and on top of that, it wants my admiration, it's not something I can entertain seriously. It just doesn't check the boxes that I need to live my life as a good person. I can do the things that I want to do, and I can have the conversations and make the arguments for the life that I would like to live and for others, because again, I do still live in a society where the actions and the things I say influence and affect other people. I don't need the perception of a God hanging over my shoulder, especially one who I deem unworthy of praise. Just as a last quick clarifier, I don't have any disdain for Christians themselves. I think, from my perspective, Christians are people who have been stripped socially of their individuality. I think it's more so unfortunate than it is a bad thing. Now, of course, we do have people that are more fundamentalist or more radical, and those people definitely deserve to be more admonished. We need to look at those people and say, no, you can have religion, but you can't force your religion onto people, and you can't force the absurd laws backed by absurd reasoning onto other people. But generally speaking, I don't have any real true disdain for religious people. I understand why people are religious. I think it makes a lot of sense. People crave order, they crave meaning and reason, whether that's logic or not. At the end of the day, when I go to rest my head, I am not going to sit there and pray for something that I don't think is reasonable, even if it was true. And to answer your question, yes, I did not buy the box. I'm a wall buy kind of guy, and yes, that does make me better than you. Thank you very much. If you did like that video, I will be posting some more. I'll be talking about things like this, but don't expect me to make another kind of like video like this specifically. It's just not something I feel like valuing my time with. So if you like that, like and subscribe. Other than that, I will see y'all in the next one.